Welcome to our exploration of, well, one of the most enduring acts in music history. Today we're conducting a comprehensive analysis of the Irish rock band U2.
Quite a story.
It really is. We're tracing a journey that, and this is true, literally begins in a school kitchen in Dublin in the mid-70s.
And it goes all the way to, a multi-billion-dollar high-tech residency at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
A trajectory that very few artists could ever claim.
Almost none. We're looking at a timeline that spans nearly 5 decades now. You have the core four: Bono, or Paul Hewson,
The Edge, David Evans.
Adam Clayton, and Larry Mullen Jr. They formed in 1976 and have somehow managed to stay relevant through massive cultural shifts.
And our mission today is really to analyze how that happened. We've got a lot of biographical data, discography details, touring history to work with.
Right.
We want to understand how a group that, by their own admission, started with very limited musical skill,
Very limited.
evolved into one of the world's best-selling music artists.
Precisely. We need to look at their constant reinventions. I mean, they never stayed in one place for too long.
No.
And we'll explore the specific events, sometimes lucky, sometimes calculated, and sometimes pretty disastrous, that really define this whole career.
So let's go back to the very beginning. The year is 1976. The setting is Mount Temple Comprehensive School in Dublin.
And it all starts with a little note.
A note on the school notice board.
That note was posted by a 14-year-old Larry Mullen Jr. He was looking for musicians to form a new band. And that leads to the first, pivotal moment in their history, which took place on September 25th in his kitchen.
And this is where you can see the band's dynamic establish almost immediately.
Instantly.
Mullen was on drums, and he was joined by Paul Hewson, Bono, David Evans, The Edge, his brother Dick Evans, Adam Clayton, and a couple of others who didn't last long.
And Mullen has this very specific observation about that first practice. He said it was the Larry Mullen Band for about 10 minutes.
And then Bono showed up.
Then Bono arrived and, took charge. And what's really notable here is their own admission that they had almost no musical skill.
Their set list was mostly covers.
Mostly cover songs, which they weren't even very good at playing.
They also went through a few names before they landed on their identity. At first, they were Feedback.
Which they chose because it was one of the few technical musical terms they actually knew.
Then they became The Hype.
And during the hype era, the lineup really solidified. Dick Evans, The Edge's older brother, he was phased out.
He was a bit older, right? Already in college.
Exactly. And the rest of the group was sort of leaning toward that four-piece sound. Dick actually walked off stage ceremonially during a farewell concert in March 1978.
Leaving the four guys who would become U2.
Yes, and let's talk about their name, U2. It wasn't some bolt of lightning or inspiration.
No, it came from a friend of Adam Clayton's, a punk musician named Steve Averill. He gave them a list of 6 options.
And they chose U2 not because they loved it. Far from it. They chose it because it was the name they disliked the least.
Which is not exactly a ringing endorsement.
No, but they felt it was ambiguous, had some, open-ended interpretability, and it would look good on a poster.
And just a few weeks after becoming a 4-piece, in March of '78, they hit a really major milestone. They won the Pop Group 78 Talent Contest in Limerick.
That was a crucial turning point. The prize was £500 and a recording session.
The money must have helped.
The money was good, but The Edge has said that while he had no idea how good they actually were, winning that competition was just incredibly important for their morale.
It gave them the belief that this could actually go somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though a disastrous demo session followed shortly after, that win was the validation they needed.
And it seems like the influence of punk rock here was just vital. They were listening to bands like the Stranglers, the Jam, the Sex Pistols.
And that whole scene convinced them that, technical perfection wasn't a prerequisite for success. They realized that energy and attitude could carry them while they learned their instruments.
And that ethos carried them right into 1980 when they signed with Island Records and released their debut album, Boy.
Boy was produced by Steve Lillywhite, who would go on to be a longtime collaborator. But while that first album showed promise, the creation of their second album, October, was just
Chaos.
complete chaos. And there's a specific story about a lost briefcase that really threw a wrench in the works.
This was in March 1981. The band's on tour in the United States.
Right. And backstage at a nightclub in Portland, Oregon, Bono loses a briefcase. That briefcase contained all his lyrics, all his musical ideas for the upcoming album.
I mean, that is a songwriter's worst nightmare.
It forced them to just improvise. They went into the recording studio almost completely unprepared. Bono had to come up with lyrics on the spot.
Lily White called the sessions completely chaotic and mad.
But there was another layer of tension during that October era, too.
You're talking about the Shalom Fellowship.
Yes. Bono, The Edge, and Larry Mullen Jr. were involved in this charismatic Christian group in Dublin, and it led to this profound internal conflict.
They started to question if the whole rock and roll lifestyle was compatible with their faith.
To the point where Bono and The Edge actually considered quitting the band.
Eventually, they chose the band over the Fellowship. And it seems like that decision really fueled their next record, War, which came out in 1983.
It was a very distinct shift toward political awareness.
This is where they found their voice as a politically conscious group. Songs like Sunday, Bloody Sunday, addressing the troubles in Northern Ireland.
And New Year's Day, which was about the Polish solidarity movement. It was a harder-hitting sound. And the Tour for War produced one of the most iconic images in their history.
At Red Rocks Amphitheater.
That concert in June 1983 almost didn't happen.
The weather was just atrocious.
It was pouring rain, it was foggy, they almost canceled it. But that weather created this incredible atmosphere for the video recording.
The sight of Bono singing in the mist, silhouetted against those red rocks.
He had established their reputation as a premier live act. It was a moment where the elements just conspired to make them look absolutely heroic.
So, moving into 1984, the band makes a decision that confused a lot of people in the industry. They hire Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois for their fourth album.
The Unforgettable Fire.
And this was seen as a huge risk.
It was. The founder of Island Records, Chris Blackwell, he was dead against it. He thought Eno would bury their sound in what he called avant-garde nonsense.
And U2 was on the verge of becoming the biggest band in the world.
Right. And instead they pivot to something much more atmospheric and abstract.
But it worked. And then came July 13th, 1985, Live Aid.
This is often cited as the moment U2 became global superstars. They had their designated slot at Wembley Stadium.
And during a 12-minute performance of the song Bad, Bono breaks protocol.
He climbs down from the stage, leaps over the security barrier, and pulls a female fan from the crowd to dance with her.
It was a long detour. I mean, it actually cut their set short. They didn't get to play Pride in the Name of Love.
And the rest of the band was reportedly furious right after the show. They thought Bono had blown it.
But the television audience saw something totally different.
They saw a performer just breaking that barrier between the star and the fan. Yeah. It connected them with a global audience of 1.5 billion people.
And that momentum leads directly into 1987 and the Joshua Tree. This was their exploration of America.
They were just fascinated by the place, the open spaces, its ideals and its failures. They were exploring blues, folk, gospel.
The album became one of the best-selling in history. Time magazine put them on the cover.
With the headline Rock's Hottest Ticket, they had reached the absolute peak of commercial rock success.
However, the follow-up, Rattle and Hum in 1988, it hit a wall.
It did. It was a mix of live tracks and new studio songs with a documentary, and the criticism was harsh.
The backlash was really significant.
Critics called it pretentious, bombastic, misguided. The band was accused of trying to place themselves in the pantheon of rock legends a bit too aggressively.
They realized they had painted themselves into a corner.
Which leads to that very famous moment in Dublin at the end of the 80s.
On December 30th, 1989, on stage at the Point Depot,
Bono announces to the crowd that the band had to go away and just dream it all up again.
It was basically an admission that the current version of U2 was finished.
They needed a radical reinvention.
And they certainly found it in Berlin. In 1990, they arrived at Hansa Studios to record what would become Achtung Baby.
But it was not a smooth process.
No, it was incredibly tense. The band nearly broke up.
Clayton and Mullen wanted to stick to their rock roots, while Bono and The Edge were listening to industrial and electronic dance music.
A complete stalemate.
Until they improvised the song One, and that track bridged the gap and, you could say, saved the album.
Achtung Baby, released in 1991, was a complete sonic and visual shift. And the tour that followed, Zoo TV, was unlike anything they had ever done.
Zoo TV was a direct response to the earnestness of the 80s. Instead of waving white flags, they embraced irony.
The stage was built of Trabant cars and massive video screens.
And Bono adopted this persona of the Fly, with the wraparound shades and the leather. They were making prank calls to the White House from the stage.
They were satirizing media overload by becoming the overload.
Exactly. And they continued this experimental path with the Europa and then the album Pop in 1997.
But Pop brings us to another lesson in the band's history. Deadlines.
Pop really serves as a cautionary tale. They let their manager, Paul McGuinness, book the Pop Mart tour before the album was even finished.
Which put them in a terrible position. They were rushing to complete the recording when they should have been rehearsing.
Bono later called it the worst decision U2 ever made.
And the Pop Mart tour itself was this huge spectacle. A 100-foot golden arch, a giant olive on a cocktail stick.
And a 40-foot mirror ball lemon.
That lemon.
And that lemon became a symbol of the era's problems. The band was supposed to emerge from it for the encore, but it kept malfunctioning. It would trap them inside.
It was just this massive, expensive art project that I think confused a lot of their audience who just missed the straight-ahead rock band.
For sure. So after all the confusion of the 90s, the band enters the 2000s with a new mission.
Bono declared they were reapplying for the job of the best band in the world.
This was the Back to Basics era. The album was all that you can't leave behind. They stripped away the irony and the electronics.
And history intervened again. Following the September 11th attacks, the album's themes of loss and resilience just resonated so deeply with American audiences.
Their performance at the Super Bowl XXX's halftime show is still considered one of the best ever.
It was a tribute to the victims with their names projected on this huge backdrop.
It was a return to that earnest, emotional connection of the war era, but, with the polish of veterans.
And during this period, they also really embraced commercial partnerships. The album How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb had the song Vertigo,
which was ubiquitous thanks to an iPod commercial.
That partnership with Apple heralded a new way of marketing music.
But that relationship with Apple would eventually lead to a pretty significant misstep in 2014.
With the release of Songs of Innocence.
This was the largest album release of all time. Apple automatically added the album to the libraries of 500 million iTunes users.
The intention might have been generosity, but the reception was hostile.
Very hostile. Users felt their privacy was violated. Critics called it dystopian junk mail. It actually forced the band to apologize.
And Apple had to create a special tool so users could delete the album. It just showed a real disconnect between the band's ambition and the public's desire for choice.
And to make matters worse, shortly after that release, Bono had a serious bicycle accident in Central Park.
It was a severe injury. Fractures to his shoulder blade, humerus, eye socket.
It impacted his ability to play guitar and delayed their touring plans. It was a physical blow to match the reputational blow of the iTunes release.
Yet as they moved into the late 2010s and the 2020s, the focus shifted. It became about legacy, about looking back.
They did those massive stadium tours celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Joshua Tree.
They realized their back catalog was their strongest asset.
They even released Songs of Surrender in 2023, which featured 40 re-recorded, stripped-down versions of their past songs. It was a way of recontextualizing their own history.
And that brings us right up to the very recent past. U2 inaugurated the Sphere in Las Vegas with the U2UV Achtung Baby Live residency.
And this residency is, it's a technological marvel. The venue has a 16K resolution wraparound LED screen, beam-forming audio.
It allowed them to revisit Achtung Baby inside a machine that finally caught up to the futuristic vision they had during Zoo TV.
It did, but there was a significant absence on that stage.
Yes. For the first time since 1978, Larry Mullen Jr. did not perform with the band.
He was recovering from surgery, so a Dutch drummer, Bram Vandenberg, filled in. And it was a stark reminder of the physical toll of a 50-year career.
But despite all the ups and downs, the statistics are just staggering. They're the second highest grossing touring act in history.
And they have 22 Grammy Awards, which is more than any other group.
Those numbers quantify their success, but they don't really explain it.
No. If you look at the whole arc we've discussed, from that school kitchen to this Sphere, the one defining characteristic is adaptability.
They seem to have a survival instinct that kicks in whenever they get too comfortable.
Exactly. Bono once referred to Achtung Baby as the sound of 4 men chopping down the Joshua Tree. And that is the key thought here.
Their willingness to destroy their own legacy.
Their willingness to chop down what made them popular in the first place just to stay relevant. That's why they survived when so many of their contemporaries disappeared. They understand that to stay the same, you have to change.
It's a fascinating study in longevity and artistic evolution. We want to thank you for joining us on this exploration of U2's history. Thanks for listening.